The stars had always been a silent canvas, full of mysteries, waiting to be discovered. But for the Tseri, the universe had become a place of silence and abandonment. The once proud race, known for their keen intellect and peaceful ways, had found themselves alone, cast aside by the very galaxy they had helped shape. For centuries, the Tseri had been a quiet yet influential species in the galaxy, respected for their wisdom and scientific advancements. They had never sought power or conquest, only the peaceful exchange of knowledge. But as time passed, the larger and more aggressive species began to see them as weak, an inconvenience. Slowly, the Tseri were pushed to the outer edges of the galaxy, their worlds neglected and forgotten. Their population dwindled, not from war or disease, but from neglect. The galaxy moved on without them. It was in the midst of this that the galactic powers, a group of the strongest, most influential races, decided that the Tseri had no place among them. They declared that the Tseri's world was no longer a valuable asset to the galaxy. It was a decision made not by war, but by simple neglect. The Tseri were a burden, their existence seen as a reminder of a past the galaxy no longer cared about. It was decided that the Tseri should be left to fade away, quietly erased from the galaxy's history. But there were still those who saw the injustice in this. On the edge of the galaxy, an Earth ship, the UES Indomitable, happened to catch a distress signal coming from the Tseri's last known system. The message was faint, almost lost in the void of space. It was a cry for help, desperate and urgent. Captain Elena Vov, a seasoned officer of the United Earth Coalition, UEC, sat in her command chair, the soft hum of the Indomitable's engines filling the silence. She had been overseeing a routine patrol in this quiet part of space when the distress call came through. At first, she thought it was a glitch, a false alarm, but then the words became clear, and her heart sank. The Tseri were being hunted, and they were asking for sanctuary. The message was simple: "We are alone. Please help us. We have nowhere else to go." Captain Vos, known for her calm demeanor and tactical brilliance, had faced many difficult situations in her career. But this was different. The Tseri weren't asking for help in the traditional sense. They weren't pleading for military support. They weren't asking for resources or territory. They were simply asking to survive. Her first instinct was to report the message to the UEC command, but as she read the distress signal again, she knew something had to be done. The Tseri were at the mercy of the galaxy, and that mercy was nowhere to be found. With a deep breath, Captain Vos made a decision that would change everything. She would help them. She ordered the crew of the Indomitable to change course. The Tseri were located on a small, forgotten planet near the galactic edge, a place most ships never passed by. It was a world once full of life, but now it was a graveyard of broken cities and empty streets. The planet had been the center of Tseri culture, but now it was all but deserted, a symbol of what the galaxy had abandoned. As the Indomitable approached the planet, Vos knew there would be consequences. The galactic powers would not look kindly on this. They would see this as a direct challenge to their authority. But that didn't matter to her. What mattered was the lives of the Tseri. The crew of the Indomitable worked quickly. Their mission was clear: rescue any survivors, offer them sanctuary, and take them back to Earth, where they could live in peace, away from the cruelty of the galaxy's elite. But as they landed on the barren surface of the Tseri homeworld, the crew realized the true depth of the Tseri suffering. The once great cities were now just shells, broken by time and neglect. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and the few Tseri left alive looked at the human ship with a mix of fear and hope. They had given up on the idea that anyone would come to their aid. The galaxy had abandoned them, and now humans were offering a lifeline. Captain Vos and her team approached the Tseri survivors cautiously. The leader of the small group was an elderly Tseri named Kavmak, whose bright yellow eyes glowed with a mix of sadness and gratitude. He bowed his head as Captain Vos stepped forward, understanding the weight of what this moment meant. "We thought we were forgotten," Kavmak said softly. "We thought the galaxy had left us to die." "Not anymore," Captain Vos replied. "We're here to take you home. You're not alone." With those words, a new chapter began for the Tseri. They were no longer just a forgotten race, discarded by the galaxy. Thanks to one human ship and one captain's decision, they had found a new hope. But this was only the beginning. The galactic powers would not let Earth's defiance go unanswered. The Indomitable would have to face the consequences of their actions, and the Tseri would soon discover that the galaxy's cruelty was not easily forgotten. The battle for the Tseri's survival was just beginning. The decision to rescue the Tseri did not go unnoticed. The UEC was quick to receive word that Captain Elena Vos had disobeyed direct orders and brought the Tseri refugees aboard the Indomitable. The news spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Most of humanity cheered. They saw a brave captain standing up for those who had no voice, defending a race abandoned by the galaxy. But not everyone was pleased. The Galactic Council, the powerful alliance of species that ruled the galaxy, viewed Earth's actions as a direct challenge to their authority. Their first response was to send a formal complaint, demanding that the Tseri be handed over immediately. The message from the Council was clear and cold. Return the Tseri to their rightful place. Failure to do so will be considered an act of rebellion against the galaxy's established order. The consequences will be severe. For the first time in centuries, humanity had made a bold stand, and it wasn't going to be easy. Captain Vos knew this. She could already feel the eyes of the galaxy on her. The Tseri were no longer just refugees. They were now the symbol of a larger conflict between the powerful and the powerless. Back on Earth, the United Earth Coalition, UEC, held an emergency meeting to discuss the situation. High-ranking officials were furious with Captain Vos. She had acted without permission. Her decision could have serious consequences for Earth's standing in the galaxy. But not everyone disagreed with her. Admiral Rowan, the head of Earth's military forces, stood in front of the assembly, speaking with quiet determination. "Captain Vos has made her choice, and we must support it," he said firmly. "Earth has always prided itself on standing up for the oppressed. If we let the Tseri fall to the Council, we risk losing everything we stand for." Other officials argued that supporting the Tseri was reckless. The Council's power was vast, and Earth could not afford to anger such an influential force. But Admiral Rowan was persuasive, and in the end, the UEC stood behind Captain Vos. The decision was made. Earth would protect the Tseri, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, aboard the Indomitable, Captain Vos and her crew prepared for the storm that was about to come. They knew the Council would not stop at a mere complaint. Retaliation was inevitable. On the Tseri homeworld, the refugees who had once been abandoned by the galaxy began to realize the magnitude of what Earth had done. The elder Tseri leader, Kavmak, gathered the survivors together. His yellow eyes, once filled with despair, now held a glimmer of hope. "We have been given a second chance," Kavmak said, his voice trembling with emotion. "We owe our survival to these humans, who have risked everything for us. But now, we must ask, what can we do in return? We are not warriors, but we are not weak. We have knowledge, and we can help." Keelik, a young Tseri scientist, stood beside Kavmak. He was eager to do more than just survive. Keelik had spent his life studying the stars, and he knew that in the galaxy's vast network of power, knowledge was just as valuable as strength. He had studied humanity's remarkable rise to power. He had seen their resourcefulness and their unexpected brilliance. The Tseri, he believed, had much to offer humanity in return for their protection. "I have an idea," Keelik said, his voice low but certain. "If we could integrate our technology with human defenses, perhaps we can offer something of value to help protect the ship." Captain Vos, who had been listening nearby, turned to Keelik. "What exactly do you mean?" she asked, intrigued. We have developed technology that could enhance your shielding systems, making them stronger and harder to penetrate, Keelik explained. We may not be warriors, but we can fight in our own way. If you would accept our help, we could provide the expertise you need. Captain Vos considered this carefully. The Tseri had no military ships, no weapons to offer, but their scientific knowledge was unmatched. She had seen how quickly they had adapted to the human way of thinking and had already contributed valuable insights. This idea could give them a fighting chance. Let's do it, Captain Vos said, her voice steady. We'll need all the help we can get. As the Indomitable prepared to leave the Tseri homeworld, the tension in space was palpable. The Council would soon respond with their fleet, and Earth would have to defend what it had started. Yet, in the midst of this brewing storm, the Tseri were no longer helpless victims. They were allies, ready to stand alongside humanity in this fight. Far beyond the edge of the galaxy, the Galactic Council prepared its next move. Their message had been ignored, and their patience was running out. They would send a fleet to Earth to force compliance. Earth's defense systems would be tested, and so would the strength of the newfound alliance between humanity and the Tseri. Captain Vos stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, looking out at the vastness of space. She knew that this was only the beginning. But no matter what came next, Earth had made its stand, and they would not back down. The fight was coming, and humanity would not be caught unprepared. The stars were quiet, but the tension between Earth and the Galactic Council was anything but. Humanity had made its stand. It had taken in the Tseri, a race abandoned by the galaxy's powers. And now the consequences of that decision were about to unfold. Back on Earth, the United Earth Coalition, UEC, sat in a tense meeting room, staring at a screen that displayed the ultimatum sent by the Galactic Council. High Arbiter Zankel, a towering figure of the Council, had delivered their demand in a message broadcast to every corner of human space. The words were sharp, full of cold authority. Return the Tseri to their rightful place. Failure to do so will lead to severe consequences. You have 3 cycles to comply. Any further delay will be met with action. Captain Elena Vos, standing in the middle of the room with Admiral Rowan and several other UEC leaders, could feel the weight of the message. The Council's threat wasn't just words. It was a warning to humanity that defying them came with great risk. Admiral Rowan was the first to speak, his voice steady but filled with the tension that had gripped Earth. We can't give in to their demands. If we hand over the Tseri now, it will send the message that humanity can be bullied. The Council will have no reason to stop. But a few others in the room, especially those with a more cautious approach to interstellar relations, had different thoughts. This could be disastrous, one of them said. The Council's power is vast. They control resources, technology, everything we depend on. If they cut us off, it will hurt Earth's economy. Our colonies, our citizens, they will suffer. Vos stepped forward, addressing the room. I've made my decision, and I stand by it. We can't just turn our backs on the Tseri. They've trusted us. Now it's our turn to show that Earth is a place where we keep our promises. We must stand strong, no matter the consequences. She looked at the faces around the table. Some of them hesitated, others nodded in agreement. Finally, Admiral Rowan spoke again, his voice firm. Then we stand with her. We will defend the Tseri, and we will not back down. With that, the room fell silent. The decision was made. Back on the Indomitable, Captain Vos prepared her crew for what was to come. The mood aboard the ship was serious but determined. Vos had always led with confidence, but even she felt the weight of what they were about to face. Humanity had never been in such a position before. The stakes had never been so high. But Vos knew that this wasn't just about saving the Tseri. This was about sending a message to the entire galaxy. Humanity would not bow to tyranny. The Tseri, still recovering from their centuries of oppression, looked to the humans for guidance. Many of them were unsure, still not fully understanding what the future held. But the leaders of their small group, including Keelik, had begun to realize the importance of what Earth had done for them. They weren't just saving their lives. They were opening a new chapter for their people. Keelik, eager to contribute, stood in front of a group of human engineers, offering his knowledge. "We may not have soldiers," he said, "but we can help you in ways the Council cannot even imagine." His suggestion was simple, yet powerful. The Tseri had knowledge of advanced energy shielding technologies that could strengthen human defenses against the Council's ships. They also had expertise in electronic warfare, which could disrupt enemy communications and navigation systems. Keelik believed this would give humanity the edge they needed. Captain Vos listened closely. "If we can integrate that technology into our ships, it could make the difference in the coming conflict." The Tseri were eager to help, and Vos was grateful for their assistance. She knew that every bit of knowledge they shared would make humanity stronger. It was a partnership built not on weapons or armies, but on trust and shared purpose. But while the humans and Tseri worked together to strengthen Earth's defenses, the Council was far from idle. They were preparing their own response, and it would not be a peaceful one. The High Arbiter's message had been clear. The Tseri were no longer welcome in the galaxy. They would not be allowed to remain on Earth, and the Council would do whatever it took to make sure that happened. Far across the galaxy, the Council began to mobilize. Their elite fleet, the most powerful in the known universe, was now on its way to human space. Thousands of ships, led by the fearsome warlord Zarvok, had been dispatched. Their mission was simple: to neutralize the threat that humanity posed and to forcefully reclaim the Tseri. Zarvok was a brutal commander, known for his ruthless efficiency in battle. He had no patience for defiance, especially from a species like humanity, which had only recently begun to venture beyond its home planet. The arrival of Earth's fleet in the galaxy had been seen as a nuisance, but now, with the Tseri in the equation, it was a dangerous rebellion that needed to be crushed. Zarvok's fleet would soon arrive, and Earth was not yet ready for a full-scale invasion. But Captain Vos had no intention of giving up without a fight. With the help of the Tseri, Earth's defenses were strengthening every day. The time to stand up was now. The galaxy would soon see the true strength of humanity. As the Indomitable sailed through the stars, Captain Vos stood at the helm, her eyes fixed on the vastness ahead. The fight was coming, but Earth would not back down. The tension in the air was almost unbearable. The Indomitable sat in deep space, far from any inhabited system, surrounded by a fleet of Earth's best ships. These ships were now the last line of defense against the overwhelming power of the Galactic Council. Captain Alina Vos paced the bridge, her mind racing with the strategies they had been working on for weeks. The Tseri, under the guidance of Keelik, had helped humanity develop new energy shields and electronic warfare systems. The engineers worked tirelessly, integrating these new technologies into the fleet. But even with these upgrades, the Indomitable and the rest of Earth's ships were outmatched by the Council's forces. Their elite fleet was vast, and their technology was far more advanced. Yet, Captain Vos knew this was not about winning. It was about survival, and humanity had always been resourceful. They would fight with everything they had. As Vos stared at the vast star field on the bridge's main screen, the voice of Commander Harris, the ship's tactical officer, broke the silence. "Captain, we've received the Council's fleet data. They're just a few light cycles away." The words hit like a heavy blow. The enemy was close, and the time for preparation was running out. Vos turned to face her officers. "We're ready," she said, her voice firm, though the weight of the situation hung heavily on her shoulders. Her gaze shifted to Kavmak, the elderly Tseri leader who had come aboard the ship with the other survivors. He stood beside the engineers, offering quiet counsel as they adjusted the new technology. When he noticed Vos looking his way, he gave a small nod of encouragement. "We will stand with you, Captain," he said, his voice steady. "The Tseri have seen many battles, even if we are not soldiers. You are not alone." Vos gave a grateful nod, The Tseri's support had become more than just a symbolic gesture. It was now critical to their defense. On the planet Earth, a broadcast was shown to the public, offering a final message of hope. The United Earth Coalition had promised that no matter what happened, they would stand firm against the Galactic Council. The citizens of Earth and the colonies rallied behind the cause. People from every walk of life supported the effort, ready to defend their home and their newfound allies. But while Earth stood united, the enemy was closing in. The Council fleet was led by Zarvok, a ruthless commander known for his merciless tactics. His reputation struck fear into those who heard his name, and he showed no mercy to those who defied the Council's will. The Council's ships were powerful, designed for swift and deadly strikes. Zarvok's fleet was not just an army. It was a hammer meant to crush all opposition. Vaugh's voice cut through the rising tension. All ships, prepare for battle. This is our home we're fighting for. As the Indomitable and the fleet of Earth ships moved into position, the sound of their engines filled the bridge. The Indomitable was ready. The crew had done everything they could to prepare for this moment. They would face an overwhelming force, but they would not back down. The enemy fleet appeared in the distance, dark, imposing, and bristling with weapons. Zarvok's ship, the Korath, was the largest, a massive warship that dwarfed the human vessels. It led the charge, flanked by hundreds of smaller ships. "Here they come," Commander Harris said, his voice tight. The first strike came from the enemy's front lines. Energy beams shot out from the Council's ships, cutting through space with terrifying speed. The beams hit one of Earth's smaller defense ships, tearing it apart in an instant. The explosion was a reminder of the power they were facing. Vaugh's eyes never left the screen. "Return fire," she ordered. The Indomitable fired its first shots. Laser cannons and missile bursts streaked through space, but the enemy shields absorbed the hits without even faltering. Earth's ships were strong, but the enemy's technology was far superior. The Council's ships retaliated almost immediately, launching their own missiles in a devastating counterattack. "Shield holding at 75%, reported Lieutenant Mera, the ship's engineer. "But we can't take much more of this." Captain Vos clenched her fists, but she remained calm. "Hold the line. Keep firing. We need time for the Tseri tech to take effect." The Indomitable moved into position, dodging incoming fire as best as it could. The new Tseri enhanced energy shields glowed with a soft blue light, absorbing some of the enemy's energy. But it wasn't enough. Earth's ships were fast, but they were still outgunned. Then, as if in answer to the humans' prayers, the Tseri electronic warfare systems came online. Keelik had promised they would be able to disrupt the enemy's communications and navigation, and now the Tseri were delivering on that promise. A wave of interference spread across the battlefield, scrambling the Council's targeting systems and forcing their ships to lose precision. The enemy ships began to fire randomly, missing Earth's vessels by wide margins. "Nice work, Tseri," Commander Harris shouted, but Vos remained focused. "We can't stop them for long. We need to get them off Earth's doorstep." The battle raged on, both sides suffering casualties. But Earth wasn't retreating. Despite being outmatched, humanity fought with everything they had, determined to hold their ground. Zarvok watched the battle unfold from his warship, his fury growing. The humans were proving far more resilient than he had expected. They were not the weak, frightened species the Council had once believed them to be. But Zarvok had only just begun. This was only the first strike. The battle for Earth was far from over. The enemy fleet, led by the merciless Zarvok, continued its relentless assault, but the humans weren't backing down. The Indomitable and the fleet of Earth's ships fought with everything they had, their lasers and missiles streaking through space, hitting the Council's ships with increasing accuracy. Despite their technological disadvantage, the human fleet had proven they were more than just survivors. They were fighters. Captain Elena Vos stood on the bridge, her eyes locked onto the main screen, watching the chaos unfold. Energy blasts lit up the darkness of space, and the sharp screech of incoming missiles filled the air. The Indomitable was taking hits, but it held together. Its shields flared with each blast, absorbing the worst of the damage, while the crew continued to fight on. "We've lost another ship," Commander Harris shouted, his voice tight with urgency. Voss nodded, her face grim. The cost of this fight was rising, but they couldn't afford to pull back. Earth couldn't afford to lose this battle, not after everything that had been sacrificed. "Continue firing," she ordered. "We hold the line. The Tseri systems are helping, but we need to do more. Keep pushing." The Tseri aboard the Indomitable were working alongside the engineers to integrate more of their advanced technology into the fleet's defenses. Keelik, the young Tseri scientist, stood beside Lieutenant Mera, his hands moving quickly over the console. "We've adjusted the interference frequency," Keelik said. "It should affect their entire fleet now. We just need a few moments to activate it fully." Voss glanced at him, her eyes filled with determination. "Make it fast. We need to turn the tide before their main forces arrive." At that moment, the bridge crew saw something they'd been dreading. The massive warship Korath, flagship of Zarvok's fleet, began to move into position. It was a monstrous ship, its hull dark and menacing, bristling with weapons. The Indomitable was not a match for this ship on its own. "Zarvok is making his move," Harris reported. "They're concentrating their fire on the Indomitable." Voss' mind raced. The Indomitable was Earth's flagship, and it was the focal point of the battle. If it fell, the morale of their forces would shatter, and their fleet would collapse. "We can't let that happen," Captain Voss said, her voice steady despite the tension. "All ships, focus your fire on the Korath. Give the Indomitable cover." The ships of Earth's fleet responded, shifting position to engage the mighty warship. The Indomitable fired its most powerful weapons, hitting the Korath's shields with everything it had. But the enemy's shields were stronger, and the Korath didn't slow. It fired back, launching massive plasma cannons that tore through the air. The Indomitable's shields flared as the blasts hit, the ship shuddering under the force of the impact. Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, her face tight with concentration. "We're holding, but barely," Lieutenant Mera reported. "The shields won't last much longer." In that moment, Keelik's voice rang out. "Captain, it's ready." Voss turned toward him. "Do it." Keelik pressed a button, activating the Tseri interference system across the entire battlefield. The effect was immediate and stunning. Suddenly, the Council's ships began to falter. Their targeting systems went haywire, their energy beams firing off course. Zarvok's fleet struggled to maintain their formation. "Good job, Keelik," Commander Harris shouted. The human ships, taking advantage of the chaos, fired their weapons with renewed vigor. Earth's fleet had just gained the upper hand. The Indomitable fired a direct hit on the Korath's weapon systems, knocking out one of its main cannons. Another round struck its engines, sending sparks flying from the hull. Zarvok's face twisted in anger as he watched his flagship take damage. His fleet had been thrown into disarray, but he wasn't ready to admit defeat. "We'll break them," Zarvok growled, his hands tightening on the command console. "Prepare to launch the boarding party." On board the Korath, special forces were being readied. The Council's elite warriors, highly trained in close combat, were preparing to board Earth's ships and take them by force. It was a desperate move, but Zarvok was willing to do anything to win. "Captain, they're launching boarding pods," Commander Harris warned. Voss's eyes narrowed. "We won't let them board. Prepare for defense. All hands, get ready for close-quarters combat." The bridge crew braced for impact. A few seconds later, a loud clang echoed through the ship as the first of the boarding pods attached to the Indomitable's hull. The sound of metal scraping against metal followed. "Boarding party is in position," Harris said. "We need to act fast." "Get the Marines to their positions," Voss ordered. "They're not taking this ship." As the Marines scrambled to their posts, the crew of the Indomitable prepared for the fight of their lives. The Council's soldiers would be well trained, but the humans had something the enemy didn't: a will to fight for their home, for their survival. "Hold them back," Vos commanded as the first wave of Council soldiers began to breach the airlocks. The battle had shifted. Zarvok's forces had underestimated humanity's resolve, and now they were paying the price. But the fight was far from over. The Korath wasn't out of the fight yet, and Zarvok would not stop until Earth was brought to its knees. The battle raged on as the Indomitable and Earth's fleet held their ground against the massive forces of the Galactic Council. The Tseri-enhanced systems had bought them some precious time, but the enemy was not easily defeated. Captain Elena Vos stood at the helm, her mind sharp, every decision crucial in this desperate fight for survival. The bridge was chaotic, filled with the sounds of alarms and the voices of the crew working frantically. The Korath, Zarvok's flagship, had taken heavy damage, but it was still moving, still a threat. The Council's boarding party had already breached several sections of the Indomitable. The Marines were holding their ground, but the fighting was fierce. Zarvok wasn't going to give up easily. "Captain," Commander Harris said, his voice strained, "we've got 2 more boarding pods coming in. They're targeting the aft section this time." Vos gritted her teeth. "We need to stop them before they get a foothold. Order the Marines to move out. We can't afford to lose control of the ship." As the orders went out, Vos' mind raced. The Indomitable had taken a lot of hits, and the crew was stretched thin. Every deck had its hands full, dealing with both the external threat of the enemy fleet and the internal threat of the boarding forces. There was only so much they could do. "Admiral Rowan is reporting that the other ships are in trouble," Harris added, his face grim. "The enemy is focusing all their fire on the fleet now. The Korath's weapon systems are back online. They're tearing through our defenses." Vos' heart sank. They needed more time. She needed more time. "Activate the Tseri shields on all ships," she ordered. "If we can't beat them with firepower, we'll have to outlast them." The Tseri energy shields flared to life, glowing a soft blue as they enveloped the fleet. The shields weren't perfect, but they could absorb a significant amount of damage. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give Earth's ships a fighting chance. Meanwhile, on the Indomitable, the Marines fought with all their might, pushing back against the Council soldiers who had boarded their ship. Lieutenant Mera led a team to secure the lower decks, while Sergeant Morgan and his squad fought their way through the hallways, pushing back the enemy forces. The sound of gunfire echoed through the ship as the Marines took positions, determined to keep the enemy at bay. "We can't let them reach the bridge," Sergeant Morgan barked, his voice steady. "Move out now." The soldiers fought with everything they had. Each Council soldier they cut down brought them one step closer to victory. But the enemy was relentless. They had been trained for this, and they were dangerous. But the humans had something else: heart. Back on the bridge, Captain Vos stood tall, watching the chaos unfold on the screen. She refused to look away, to show any sign of fear. This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a fight for the future. The Tseri needed Earth's help, and humanity had already made a promise to them. "We're holding," Harris reported, "but it's getting harder. The Korath is pushing us back." Vos' hands gripped the command chair. The Council's fleet was overwhelming, but human ingenuity had always been Earth's greatest strength. They had the will to fight and the ability to adapt. The Tseri had taught them much about advanced technology, but it was Earth's unyielding spirit that would see them through. "Captain," Keelik said, his voice urgent, "I have an idea. If we can get close enough to the Korath, we can overload its weapon systems. It's risky, but it might give us the advantage we need." Vos didn't hesitate. "How close?" "Not more than 200 meters, but we'll need to be fast. If we can breach their outer shields, we can disable their weaponry long enough for the fleet to get a shot in." Vos' mind raced, the plan risky but potentially the only way to end this. The Korath was still the biggest threat in the battle, and taking it down would cripple the Council's fleet. "Do it," Voss said, her voice steady. "Prepare the ship." The crew scrambled to make the adjustments. The Indomitable began to move, dodging incoming fire from the Korath and the enemy fleet as it made its way toward the massive warship. With every twist and turn, the ship took hits, but it remained operational. "We're almost in position," Commander Harris said, his eyes glued to the screen. Voss's heart raced as they closed in on the Korath. The enemy ships were in pursuit, launching everything they had. Earth's fleet did their best to cover the Indomitable, but they were fighting an uphill battle. "We're within range," Keelik confirmed. "Prepare to overload." Voss nodded. "Now, Keelik, do it." There was a moment of silence, followed by a violent tremor that shook the entire ship. The Korath's shields flickered as the overloaded energy coursed through them. The Indomitable took its shot, a barrage of weapons fire that struck the Korath directly. Its engines flared, smoke and sparks bursting from the massive warship as it struggled to stay intact. "We did it," Commander Harris shouted. But the battle was far from over. Zarvok was not one to admit defeat easily. His flagship was badly damaged, but it was still operational. And he had one more card to play. "We've got another surprise," Zarvok's voice echoed across the battlefield. "Prepare for reinforcements." The battlefield was a chaotic mess of flashing lights and sounds of destruction. The Korath, Zarvok's flagship, was still standing, though badly damaged. Despite the overloading of its systems and the massive damage it had taken from the Indomitable's final assault, it was not going down easily. Captain Alina Voss stood at the helm of the Indomitable, her mind focused and sharp as she watched the battle unfold. "Zarvok has called in reinforcements," Commander Harris said, his voice grim. "We're outnumbered again. A new wave of Council ships is jumping in from the nearby system." Voss's jaw tightened. The enemy just wouldn't give up. Earth's fleet had been fighting nonstop for hours, and many ships were on the verge of falling. But there was still hope. The Korath was vulnerable now, and the Council's reinforcements wouldn't be enough if they could finish the job. "We hold the line," Voss said with determination. "All ships, focus your fire on the Korath. This is our chance to end it." The Indomitable moved forward, its weapons blazing as it cut through the chaos. Earth's fleet, rallying around the flagship, launched everything they had left at the Korath. Explosions rocked the massive warship as the barrage of energy blasts and missiles hit their mark. The Korath's outer hull cracked, its shields flickering weakly as it struggled to keep itself together. "We've got a breach in their shield grid," Lieutenant Mera shouted from the control panel. "We can do this. Just a little longer." The enemy reinforcements were still coming, but Earth's ships fought back with all the strength they had. The Tseri's interference system continued to scramble the Council's targeting systems, forcing them to fire blindly, but it was clear that they were starting to lose their advantage. "We can't keep this up for much longer," Commander Harris warned. "We need to take out that flagship now, or we'll lose the whole fleet." Voss clenched her fists. "Target the Korath's engines. If we destroy them, it won't matter how many ships they have left." The fleet adjusted its focus, and the next round of fire hit the Korath's engine section. This time, the blast was too much. The ship shuddered violently, and a massive explosion erupted from the Korath's rear section. It was a bright, blinding light that lit up the battlefield. The Council ships, now leaderless, began to fall apart. Some attempted to retreat, but it was too late. With the Korath destroyed, the heart of Zarvok's fleet had been ripped out. Earth's ships swarmed in for the final attack. "We did it," Harris breathed, looking at the screen as the last of the enemy ships were disabled or destroyed. "We actually did it." But as the smoke cleared, Captain Voss knew the battle wasn't entirely over. They had won, but there was still one final threat. The Council's commander, Zarvok himself. The angry leader had managed to escape the destruction of the Korath, and his ship, though battered, remained in space. "He's not done yet," Voss muttered to herself. She knew that Zarvok's pride would push him to take one last stand, and he had one more trick up his sleeve. "Commander Harris, prepare the Indomitable for a final assault," she ordered. "We'll finish this ourselves." The crew of the Indomitable sprang into action. They had given everything to protect Earth, and they weren't about to let the Council's commander escape. The remaining enemy ships scattered, but Zarvok's flagship, the Zarath, was charging toward them with a final wave of missiles. "Zarvok is going all in," Commander Harris warned. "He's coming at us with everything he has left." Vaz remained calm, her eyes focused. "We'll stop him. We've come this far." The Indomitable moved toward the Zarath, dodging incoming fire, and returned fire with precise, calculated shots. The crew's aim was perfect. It took only a few well-placed hits, and the Zarath's shields collapsed. Earth's fleet poured fire into the commander's last ship, and the Indomitable delivered the final blow. The explosion was deafening as the Zarath disintegrated in a blaze of fire. Zarvok's warship, and with it, his dreams of domination, were gone. A moment of silence passed over the battlefield. Earth's fleet hovered in the aftermath, battered but victorious. The remaining Council ships were retreating, their commanders knowing they had been beaten. "We did it," Lieutenant Mera whispered. "Yes," Captain Vaz said, her voice filled with relief and pride. "We did it. We've defended Earth, and we've secured a future for the Tseri." The crew of the Indomitable looked out at the wreckage of the Council's fleet, their bodies weary, but their hearts full. They had survived the impossible, standing strong against an overwhelming force. It was a victory that would be remembered for generations. Earth had shown the galaxy that it would never back down, no matter the odds. Captain Vaz stood tall, looking at her crew. "We have a lot of work to do, but Earth will stand strong. We've proven that we can overcome anything together." The Indomitable turned toward Earth, ready to return home. The battle had been hard, but humanity had fought for what was rightfully theirs. And in the end, they had won.